They serve our country and they have broken all kinds of barriers. Today we go behind the uniform to talk to women in the military.
This is Charleston Women Podcast, where you can meet like-minded, strong, independent, professional, and inspiring local women. This is Charleston Women Podcast.
And now I am so happy to welcome to the Charleston Women Podcast Chief Warrant Officer 4, Summer Levert. Summer, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Erin, for having me.
Yes, you guys were one of 4 women on the cover of Charleston Women magazine. Did you ever think in life that you would be a cover model?
No, not at all.
If you're listening to this podcast, you can't see us. She's shaking her head adamantly. But we are happy because all that you have done for your country. I mean, what a wonderful feature to put you on the cover, to honor you.
Thank you.
This interview is a chance to get to dig a little bit deeper and get to know you more. So I thank you for your time. You have a fascinating story. So I just want to start from the beginning. I'm an Ohio girl too. I see that you were raised in Ohio. Tell me how this started.
Yes.
How did you get involved in the Navy?
Well, when I was a little girl, my mother was in the Army Reserves, and it was 4 children, and she told us, we don't have money for college. So if y'all ever want to go to college, you have to go to the military. And I remember being 9 years old, and my mother dressed us up in her Army fatigues, and that's what we wore as our costumes, and we went trick-or-treating in. And so we always knew that we would join the military. My mother was Army, had an uncle that was Army. And then I had another uncle that was Navy, and Navy was never anything that crossed my mind or anything that I thought I would do. So I left in 1997, right out of high school, and went to boot camp for the Army National Guard. And my twin sister went to the Navy boot camp. And so we would exchange letters and, share our experiences and everything. And hands down, Army boot camp is way harder than the Navy boot camp. And I can tell you that because I've done both of them. And so after boot camp and after my training in the school and everything, I went back to Cleveland, Ohio. And I guess when I was younger, when I was 17 years old, I didn't realize that Cleveland, Ohio was like pretty much a dead end street. And I don't mean to offend anybody when I say that, but I can only speak from my own experiences. After training, I went back home to Cleveland, Ohio. And of course, I joined the National Guard solely to pay for college. And so I enrolled in Cleveland State University, and I also thought I was grown. And so I moved out on my own, and I was, paying bills, and I bought a car. So I had a car note. I had to pay insurance. Everything I was doing on my own. But I moved in with this guy. And that was it was my biggest mistake because, he became a priority. Working became a priority because we had bills to pay and everything. And then school became less of a priority. And this guy that I was living with ended up being a really bad drug addict. And so we were put in a very bad situation because we'll give him all the rent money, but he wouldn't pay the rent. He would go buy crack. He would smoke it up. Wow. And then slowly he started selling my clothes. I remember I had a little, I didn't have much, had a little like 19-inch TV that disappeared. I was in the Army National Guard. My uniform started disappearing. Like he was taking stuff from me. So I had to get out of that situation. I'm not gonna.
During all this, how old were you?
I had to be between 18 and 20 when I went through that entire phase. I was maybe 18 through 20.
So you grew up
I went
quickly.
through it for a while.
You grew up quickly
Very
and
quickly.
experienced some of life's lows at a very young age.
I did, but I'm very thankful because I got out of it. I didn't end up in the streets. I didn't end up as a prostitute. I didn't end up as a stripper. I didn't end up on drugs. My way out of that was to join the Navy. Now, through the process of dealing with a crackhead and he's selling all of our stuff, we were evicted. We had nowhere to go. We couldn't go to our parents' house. None of them, everybody was like, no, you can't come here. So we were on the streets for a while, and he ended up in jail. I ended up, eating, I remember I had a pack of crackers and peanut butter. And that's the only thing I had to eat for an entire week. And my mom reached out to me and she said, Summer, come home. And I went home so fast, of course, crying and
Right.
crying and sorry for everything I had put my mom to, because the family worried about me while I was going through this phase with this guy. They didn't know what to think. You know what I
Hard
mean?
for
They
them
just
to
thought,
watch the choices that you were
right.
making.
But hard for them to watch. But, they sat back and they watched it, because I was very stubborn and they realized that I was going to make my own decisions and stuff. And so I did. And I'm very glad I did. And so I got out of the situation with that guy, moved back in with my mother, immediately started working again. And then I started working 2 jobs and going back to school. And then I got my own apartment again. Mm-hmm. And I realized that I was working really, really hard. And every dime I got was going towards paying bills. Now, my sister, on the other hand, who was in the Navy, she was seeing the world. She was in Australia. She was in Thailand. She was in Hawaii. She would come home and she would have gifts for everybody. She was driving a really nice car. She was wearing really nice clothes.
Wait a second. This is your twin sister, right? This is your twin?
My twin sister.
Right. Mm-hmm. So she did something right. You wanted that lifestyle.
I needed something different. And I realized too, if I stayed in Cleveland, I would, every once in a while, I would go chasing this guy. I would go looking for him again. You know what I mean? Because I wasn't over him. I was very young and I was very stupid and I was very naive. I didn't know how drugs worked back then. I thought I could be the person to heal him, cure him from that addiction and get him out of the streets and everything. I just learned really, really quick a hard lesson about drugs, unfortunately. And so I needed to get away from that. And I knew that the only way I could get out of that is to get away from it. And so I was at work one day. I was at the garden center and I flagged a guy down. We had a recruiting office that was down the street from where I worked. And he used to come to the coffee shop next to the flower shop every single morning. And so I purposely stood out close to the road. And when I seen him, I flagged him down. And of course he pulled over, and I went and talked to him. I said, hey, I want to join the Navy. And so he said, well, come down to the recruiting office when you get off of work. And so I did. And I hung out there for about 3 or 4 days. And then finally I said, well, what does it take to join the Navy? And the guy, he said, oh, I thought you just wanted to hit on me. And I said, no, because I wasn't into any guys. I didn't want to date nobody. I was, really serious here. And I wanted to get out of there, join the Navy.
Right.
And so,
wow.
And so basically, the recruiter made me all these promises, couldn't deliver. And disappeared on me. And my sister came home and she took me to she was working at the recruiting office. And anyway, she got me involved with the recruiter and everything. And I left for boot camp within like a month or 2 of having that conversation. And I told him, I said, I need to go like right now. So he got me out of there. I went up to Great Lakes. I did boot camp there. And then from Great Lakes, I went to my very first command, which was a CB command, which is not Navy like at all. CBs are closer to Army than they are Navy. We were boots on ground, not on a ship. We were sleeping in the dirt. All the stuff that I did in the Army that I despised. You're like,
why am I doing this again in the Navy?
I didn't understand it. But along with that, I also drove boats. And so my first command, I thought I made the biggest mistake of my life. I got yelled at a lot. I couldn't seem to do anything right. My primary job was to do maintenance on the boats and clean toilets. And I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, where is the fun in this at? And I had decided that I wasn't going to stay in the Navy past my 4-year contract. I said, I'm going to do 4 years and then I'm going to figure out what else I'm going to do after that 4 years is up. And so during my first 2 years in the Navy, I started working for this guy. His name is Tony Surratt. We're still really, really good friends to this day. But he sat me down one day and he said, what do you want to do with your life? At this point, I think I had 2 years in the Navy. I hadn't done anything. I wasn't qualified in nothing. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wasn't promoting. I just was cleaning toilets every day and doing maintenance, because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And he said, are you qualified in this? And I said, I've never heard of that before. He was like, well, have you gotten your second class swim qualification? I was like, I didn't know I was supposed to, And so he kind of set me on a path of, hey, this is what you need to do.
He was your mentor.
To be an
right.
He was my mentor. This is what you need to do as an E3, but you need to make E4. You need to pick a job because at the time I was undesignated. He said, so what is it that you want to do? And I said, well, I want to be a IT. And he said, why do you want to be an IT? I said, that's what everybody said the money is at. And he said, well, do you know what they do? I said, I have no idea. So he sent me to a ship and he said, I'm going to send you to the ship. You work with the ITs for a month. Decide whether or not that's what you want. And so I go to the ship for that month. I work with the ITs and I absolutely hated it. They worked in the dark. It was cold. They looked at computer screens all day.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm not really a techie type of person. I'm more of a hands-on person. So I was like, no, this is not for me. I came back and he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a bosun's mate. Now, bosun's mates in the Navy work outside and they work outside in the rain, sleet, snow, hail, and the sunshine. It doesn't matter what the weather. But we also do a lot of heavy lifting. We do a lot of rigging. We do the dirty work, with the wire rope grease, and we refuel the ships. We do all the painting and the preservation. We use needle guns to get the rust up, and he said, I don't think this is for you, because at the time there was very few female
that's right. There were
in
only
the Navy.
Two. It's mainly male. Only two in the history of the Navy. Is that correct? At the time that you were
there were two bosuns, which is what I am now. Okay. And that is a bosun mate that has become a chief warrant officer. Okay. So then your title becomes a bosun. So yes, there were only two females in the history of the Navy.
Podcast advertising is the new way to reach your best audience. Podcast advertising gives your business a voice of authority. Be heard. Advertise on one of our podcasts. Visit carolinapodcasts.com or call 843-345-7012.
You're listening to the Charleston Women Podcast.
When he told you no, with the heavy lifting and the hard work and all seasons, what made you say no, yes? When everyone's discouraging you and saying it's not for you, it's too hard, what in the back of your head said, no, really, this is what I want to do and I'm going to do it?
So he told me, I will give you 2 weeks to think about it. And in 2 weeks, we can talk again and you can tell me what you want to do. So 2 weeks went by and I gave it a lot of thought, and my sister was a bosun's mate and she said, Summer, you don't want to do this job. She said, we miss a lot of meals. We're always working. We're always dirty. We can't be pretty and wear makeup and have our hair and nails done because it's just all going to get ruined. And so I was like, man, but at the time I was undesignated and I was working in that field and I enjoyed it. I liked it. I liked the hard work. I liked feeling like I was accomplishing something. I like wearing the paint on my coveralls because, to me, it just showed everybody else like, hey, this is what I did. I painted the ship today, and the ship is beautiful now because of me. And so when 2 weeks went by, he came back to me. Tony came back to me. He said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, Chief, I want to be a bosun's mate. He laughed and he said, you're serious, aren't you? And I said, yes. And he said, well, I tell you what, he said, if you want to be a bosun's mate, I'm going to make you a bosun's mate. And so he literally started pulling out all these manuals from his office and he set a stack of books in front of me about this high. And he said, this is all the stuff that you need to learn. And I think at the time it was maybe June. He said, you have till September to learn it because you have an exam to take. I was like, wow, I'm never going to get through this stuff. And oh, by the way, it's really boring and dry. So I can't sit there and read a book,
Not entertaining
and
reading.
So, yeah, but he didn't just give me that stuff and say, hey, read it and go forth and do good things. He opened the books for me. He highlighted the stuff I needed to know. He made me teach it back to him the next day, every single day. I couldn't go to lunch. I wasn't allowed to take phone calls. I couldn't do anything. I stayed at work late because his priority was to make sure I knew the knowledge so that I can take the exam in September and get promoted, which is exactly what I did. I took the exam and I got promoted my first time up taking the exam. And then after that, he said, you can't stop studying because your E5 exam will be in 1 year. He said, if you don't keep studying right now, you're not going to gain that knowledge. And oh, by the way, you need to know more than what you know now. Wow. And so during that year, I ended up deploying and he, all those books that I had, he took them and he Xeroxed them and he cut them down to they used to have these planners, these like portfolios. Yeah. Back then, this was early 2000s. They had these portfolios that you could just, carry stuff in or whatever. Like you can put calendars or, and schedules in them. But he took all my books and he shrunk them down. He went to like Kinko's and shrunk them down and packed everything into that small book. And I mean, back then I didn't wear glasses, so I could read all that small stuff.
Oh, the small print back then. And I'm sure, I mean, kudos to him, just the efforts and the cost that it took for him to go and do this. Was before we did scanners and everything that we have now. Like, that's very impressive. He went to so much effort for you.
He did. And I tell you, that's why we're still friends to this day. But I took that book, and since he took all that time and that effort, I said, I cannot disappoint Tony. I have to study. So every single day when I was deployed, and I was deployed in Kuwait, when I wasn't working, I was studying. I was in my rack with my little flashlight, when everybody else was asleep, I was studying. I was in my books, and I made E5 my first time up. And so then after I made E5, I ended up leaving that command, left the CB command, and went to a ship. My first ship was the USS Mesa Verde, but it was a pre-com. And so since it was a pre-com, we weren't going out to sea. It was still being built down in Pascagoula, Mississippi. And so 2 years I had to sit around and do nothing. I could do, some courses all day. I could go to college, which I did, I did all that kind of stuff and everything. But I needed to learn my job on the ship. I needed some hands-on experience. So I just volunteered to get on every single ship that was getting underway. And as we started getting more sailors, I would take those sailors with me. And we all, I was an E5, they were E1s, but we all stood to watch us together. We all got our paperwork and our qualification cards signed off at the same time, because I had to get all these qualifications, but I had to get more because now I was in a supervisor position, so we all learned together, from all the way from phone talker, to signalman, the jobs that the E1s and the E2s do, but all the way up to like rig captain and, the stuff that the supervisors do. So I went to every single ship that would let me come on board. And I learned that in that 2 years. And then when my ship finally commissioned, I knew what I was doing. And I was almost like a pro, except I didn't get treated really good because that was my first ship and I was an E5. I always got the job of like the phone talker. I would want to drive the small boats, or I would want to be the petty officer in charge, for different evolutions, that we were doing, because we, as a boatswain's mate, we do so much stuff on a ship. And I would always get told, nope, you're not ready. Every night I would be in my book.
Do you feel like it was because you were the one woman that they were giving you those jobs and telling you no?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because all the other petty officers were men.
Right.
They were all men.
Do you feel in your time in the Navy that has changed or is still changing?
No.
I was hoping for some glimmer of hope for girls who are going into this right now. You don't see the change though that you would like yet?
What I see is a lot more female boatswain's mates. We have a lot of them now.
Good.
And a lot of them talk to me and they tell me the challenges that they're going through. And I want to hear their stories, and I just think that because we're female, we're expected to not be able to lift heavy stuff. We're expected to get overheated easily and have to go take water breaks or, whatever the case may be. And so we do get treated a little bit different. And I just tell the girls, don't give up. Just, stay in your books. One, make sure, when it is your turn, you're going to shine by knowing what you're doing. Don't make anybody make you look stupid. Make sure, you continue to ask to be in those positions, but then know what you're doing when you're out there, because it's very difficult. But I've seen the male sailors, the male boatswain mates in certain positions, and the chief will walk them through certain things. Whereas if I was in that position, they would instantly fire me and put somebody else in my spot, But I'll never forget, we had a major inspection on the ship. And I set everything up, I was in charge. I worked day and night and we were in port, which means we were tied to the pier. I didn't go home. I stayed on the ship 10 o'clock at night. I'm calling my chief like, hey, chief, I'm ready. Come and inspect, the night before the inspection, come and inspect everything. And I had put everything together. I had got all the sailors prepared. I had made sure they knew how to brief the instructors or the inspectors on everything that we had going on. Yeah. My chief came down there and he was like, okay, yep, good job. Such and such, who is another male, is going to present this tomorrow. And I never forget, I said, Chief. He's not even been back here. He don't know nothing about what's going on back here. I did all this. I put all this together. And he said, you think you're ready? And I said, yes, Chief, I know I'm ready. And he said, all right, don't F it up, is what he said to me. And I remember I was up all night long because I was terrified. I was up all night long. I was studying. I was making sure I was going over all the steps. I was going over all the equipment. And the next day, the inspectors came on board and I did a really, really good job. And I was really proud of that. But after that happened, I still got treated differently. You know what I mean? And I really felt like an outcast. The guys would all hang out together, you know, and I didn't hang out because I would always be studying and I would always be helping junior sailors to study. And my chief, one day he told me, he was like, well, maybe you feel like an outcast because you don't hang out with anybody. And I said, well, that's just dumb.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to the bar and get drunk with y'all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And be sick the next day at work and can't do your job. That's not
like for being responsible that you were the outcast. That's a shame.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where do things stand right now? Where are you working?
So I got commissioned in 2014. And when I found out I got commissioned, I was in a really dark spot. I was a chief in the Navy. And I was on the USS Eisenhower. And so I made a professional mistake. I was on the fan tail. We were doing a towing evolution. And my bosun at the time, he kept telling me, shut up, Chief. Chief, you don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, bosun, but this is not right. This is not how we're supposed to do things. And he was like, shut up, just let me do it. The captain of the ship was telling him over the radio, bosun, I need you to hurry up so I can launch these aircraft. And our equipment was kind of rusty. So things were moving kind of slow where we were at. And so the bosun cut corners. And in doing that, a sailor ended up getting hurt. He's a really, really, really good sailor. He meant well. And he was trying to rush things along. And he ended up getting dragged across the entire deck. And so that was road rash up his entire body. And he ended up crushing both of his legs. Once he stopped, somebody had to cut the rope in order for him to not go over the side of the ship and get killed. But, you know, he ended up crushing both of his legs. And so I just thought my whole career was done after that. And I really thought that I was ruined. And I didn't even look to do anything. I was going to get out the Navy because I couldn't deal with that. I had nightmares. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I couldn't do anything because I let that happen, you know, and I took it very personal because when I said something, I should have said something and I should have said it loud and I should have stood behind what I said and I didn't. And so when the results came out for Chief Warrant Officer that year, I didn't even look for my name to be on the list. But my department head called me to his office one night. It was about 10 o'clock at night. We had been doing drills all day. I was super tired. And the only thing I wanted to do was go to my rec. And so he called me to his office and he said, once I walked in, he threw the paper at me and he said, what the hell is this? And I picked the paper up. I'm like, what did I do now? You know? And it was the list with my name on it. And I just busted out in tears. Wow. Because I'm like, you know, I finally got recognized. Maybe there is hope for me. So once I got commissioned, I became that accident. It just taught me a really valuable lesson. First of all, if you see something, now it's my job. I'm the bosun. All this equipment belongs to me. All of these sailors belong to me. Their lives are in my hand and they're depending on me because I used to look up and trust my bosun and I wanted my sailors to be able to trust me. I used to yell at them a lot. They didn't understand until I told them my story. I told them what I've been through. And I said, this is the reason I'm so hard on you. And oh, by the way, I'm 10 times tougher on females than I am on males because males are going to get a pass. Females, you got to do more than look cute. You know what I mean? You have to know what you're doing and you have to gain the trust of the captain. And I remember when I got to my first ship as a commissioned officer, my captain he literally looked me up and down and he said, do you think you can handle this? And I said, yes, sir, I can. Now I was shaking in my boots. I was terrified. You know what I mean?
You can't let him see that.
He didn't know I was sweating. But I used to day and night. I used to just walk the ship back and forth, making sure everything was, you know, the way it was supposed to be. And I was reading, I was in my manuals, I was at every evolution, you know what I mean? And so fast forward that to now, I did 3 ships back to back. because I was trying to prove to the Navy that I could do this job. Y'all commissioned me. You made me a bosun. And so now I'm going to prove to you that I have what it takes to do this job. There were still some naysayers. They said, oh, she's going to fail. Oh, she doesn't know what she's doing. Stuff like that. That's just, I think that's the nature of people. People, they like to just talk a lot of noise about other people that are doing, stuff on ships. You know what I mean? And 3 ships back to back, I worked myself down to the bone. And on my last ship, my job is very stressful. Like there was a lot of sleepless nights. There's a lot of worrying about making sure everything is okay, making sure your sailors are safe, making sure they're not going to get hurt, even making sure your equipment is going to work the next day, because my sole job was to make sure the equipment was operational and make sure the sailors were safe during the evolutions. And I had a stroke on my last ship. Really? And so after I had my stroke, even that didn't slow me down. My captain, he said, bosun, he says, you're really great. I love having you here, but you got to go. You got to go take care of yourself. He said, because there's life after the Navy, and you still want to do 30 plus years in the Navy. You still got some time to go, but you need a break.
Right.
So I need you to call your detailer.
You don't have a little
that's what he was telling me. You're not going to make it if you don't take care of yourself. And I was like, oh no, sir, I feel fine, but I was off the ship for about 3 months. And he called me one day and he was like, bosun, I need a replacement in here for you. Did you call your detailer? I said, no, sir, I didn't. I said, can you call the hospital and talk to my neurologist and my cardiologist? They said I'm safe to come back to the ship.
Wow.
I'm still pushing to come back to the ship. I didn't realize, how important I was. And I love what I do. I was very passionate and I wasn't ready to stop, And so.
But you worked so hard to get there, right?
I did.
Worked so hard to get there. It's hard to step away.
And you know what else, Erin? My male counterparts, they weren't having strokes.
Okay.
They were doing their job. And I was like, if they can do it, I can do it. At the time, I think I was like 37 or 38 when I had a stroke. So I was like, I'm still very young. You know what I mean? I still got time left to give to the Navy. And so I ended up back on the ship. Now, my captain said to me, he said, once you leave this ship, you will go to shore duty. Not might, not possibly. You will go to shore duty. You will take yourself a break. So now I'm here in Charleston and I've been here for 2 years now. And when I got here, I was still in that mindset of moving really fast, always being busy, not taking breaks and everything. But it's Charleston. Things are slow and things are mellow.
You're not in Cleveland anymore.
No.
You're in the South
and I'm not on the ship either.
Right,
and you know what, Erin, I like the slow pace. And
good for you. And did I read this correctly? Are there congratulations in order? Are you?
Yes, I'm going to get to that.
No, I don't. Zip it up. Sorry, keep going.
And so I had a conversation with my mom, and she said, Summer, she said, what are you still trying to prove to anybody? She said, you've done your time. You've done your part in the Navy. And she said, the Navy is very lucky to have had you for as long as they did. But now you need you. You need to be a wife. You need to be a mom, And I said, you know what, Mom, you're right. And so me and my husband, for 2 years, we tried to have a baby. And for, I'm thinking women have babies in their 40s all the time. That's what you see in the media, right? Well, it just wasn't that easy for me. But finally, after 2 years of trying, I did get pregnant. And we are expecting our first baby in June. And my husband told me, he said, it's time for you to retire. I've got 24 years in right now. I have 26 years when I retire. My sister is retired. My brother-in-law is retired. My husband is retired. Everybody around me. And of course, my mentor, he's been retired for a long time. Everybody around me is retired. And so, my husband, he said, you're the last one. He said, it's time to hang it up. And he said, and we'll make our home here in Charleston. And I said, okay.
Good for you. When is the baby due?
In June 10th.
Congratulations. Do you know if it's a boy and
Thank
girl,
you.
boy or girl? Are you not sharing?
No, I'm not sure. I don't know yet. When we did the photo shoot, I had just found out I was pregnant 2 days before that.
Okay, so it's still early. Well,
Yes.
I am so happy for you. My last question,
Thank you.
it's been fascinating to me, someone who's a civilian who knows nothing about my grandfather was in the Navy, so I heard his stories, but your perspective and your grit and your determination are phenomenal. And I think no matter what we as women are doing in our lives, you're an inspiration to all of us. So I asked finally
Thank you so much.
for, a young person, anyone, I shouldn't even just say a young person, but what piece of advice do you want to leave with us? What piece of life advice to keep going, to go after what you want, and to not let others put you down and tell you what you can and can't do?
Absolutely. Go after your dreams. If there is something you want to do, do it. There was no way I ever thought I'd be wearing this uniform. There's no way I thought I'd be a commissioned officer, because people told me that I wouldn't. People told me I couldn't, but God had a bigger plan for me. And that is what I know. And I just want the young women out there to know that you can do it too. If you can, my dad, when I was a kid, his favorite line, he said, if you can dream it, you can achieve it.
My mom said the same thing. I love that.
And those are some great words to live by. She
used to write it on the mirrors.
Nice. That was what my dad. That's what my dad said. If you can dream it, you can achieve it.
I 100% believe that. Summer, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations.
Thank you so much,
again.
Erin. Thank you so much.
It has been such a pleasure. For everyone listening again, this has been Chief Warrant Officer 4, Summer Levert, and the pleasure of sharing her inspiring story with us today on the Charleston Women Podcast.
Thanks for spending time with Charleston Women Podcast. Please like us and follow us on whatever platform you're using to access Charleston Women Podcast.